She told me to leave so they could finish having sex in our bed. I left forever. 7 years later, I discovered the horrifying truth about my ex-wife. I never thought my life would shatter in the span of 30 seconds, but that's all it took. Just half a minute to destroy 17 years of what I believed was love. I remember every detail of that day. Our anniversary. 17 years of marriage. I left work early. A bottle of her favorite champagne hidden in my briefcase alongside a small velvet box containing a diamond pendant I'd been saving for months to buy. The same pendant Catherine had pointed out in a shop window last fall, her eyes lingering just long enough for me to notice. The house was quiet when I slipped inside. Too quiet. I thought maybe she was napping, or perhaps had gone out to prepare her own surprise. That's when I heard it. Laughter from upstairs. A man's laughter, deep and comfortable, followed by Catherine's voice, that same musical tone I'd fallen in love with, but now performing for someone else. My feet moved without conscious thought, carrying me up the stairs I'd climbed thousands of times. The bedroom door wasn't even fully closed, just a casual push, and there they were. My wife of 17 years entangled with a stranger in our bed. Kathy? My voice sounded foreign to my ears, too calm, too controlled. Time froze. Her eyes met mine, and I searched desperately for shame, for remorse, for anything resembling the woman I thought I knew. Instead, I found annoyance. "What are you doing home?" she asked, as if I were the intruder. "It's our anniversary." The champagne bottle slipped from my fingers, hitting the carpet with a dull thud. The man, younger than me, I noticed bitterly, had the decency to look uncomfortable. Catherine just sighed. "Jackson, why don't you go somewhere for a few hours? Let us finish, and we can talk later." Let us finish. As if I'd interrupted a business meeting. "Sao em ko the?" I whispered, reverting to the Vietnamese phrase my grandmother had taught me long ago. How could you? Her silence was all the confession I needed. I don't remember leaving. Just the mindless drive through familiar streets that suddenly seemed alien, checking into a motel with cash because I knew she monitored our credit card statements. Room 142. The springs of the mattress creaked as I sat, staring at the wall. 17 years. Our wedding flashed before my eyes, Catherine radiant in white, both of us so young, so certain we understood love. Then Madison came along, our perfect little girl with her mother's eyes and my stubborn chin. 2 years later, Tyler completed our family. We were happy, weren't we? But there had been signs. The late nights at work, phone calls she'd taken in another room, the unfamiliar cologne I sometimes caught when she returned home. I dismissed each warning, trusting blindly. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Catherine's messages evolved from dismissive, "It's not that serious," to demanding, "When are you coming home?" to desperate as the kids' return from school approached. When Madison called, I forced steadiness into my voice. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm on an emergency business trip, nothing to worry about." "With Miss Taylor?" she asked innocently. "Yes," I lied, mentioning my lesbian colleague who Catherine had irrationally jealous of for years. That night, I researched divorce attorneys until sunrise, making lists of assets, accounts to separate, items to retrieve. My hands shook as I checked the DNA test results I'd secretly done years ago when doubts first surfaced, confirming both children were indeed mine. "You have no idea what I'm capable of when cornered," I whispered to the empty room. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was awakening to a cold, determined fury I never knew existed within me. By morning, everything was set in motion. One call to a moving company with a substantial cash bonus ensured they arrived by 8 a.m., 3 hours before Catherine typically returned from her yoga class. I directed them with military precision, pointing out only my possessions. 17 years of life, boxed up in under 2 hours. When they finished, I stood in our bedroom, now just hers, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction at the half-empty closet, the bare nightstand where my wedding photo once sat. I'd been thorough. Not a trace of Jackson Hayes remained. "Sir, where should we deliver these?" the foreman asked. "Storage unit on Highway 16, I replied, handing him another stack of bills. "I've paid for 3 months up front, cash only." My next stop was the bank. Working in finance had its advantages. I knew exactly how to ensure Catherine couldn't touch what was rightfully mine. I split our joint accounts in half, depositing her portion in a new account under her name. The rest? Let's just say offshore banking exists for situations exactly like mine. "I'm processing your withdrawal now, Mr. Hayes," the teller said, glancing nervously at her manager. "That's quite a substantial amount." "It's my money," I replied flatly. and I earned every penny of it. At work later that day, I stepped into the break room where several colleagues were gathered. Without a word, I removed my wedding band, placed it on the table, and smashed it with a paperweight. The gold crumpled like my marriage, easily destroyed under pressure. "Jesus, Jackson," whispered Tom from accounting as I swept the mangled metal into the trash. I felt their stares as I walked out. Let them talk. I didn't care anymore. Later that afternoon, Lisa from HR appeared at my desk. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." She leaned closer. "Be careful, Jackson. Catherine has connections with Director Phillips." The pieces clicked into place. My wife was sleeping with my boss, the man who controlled my career, my bonuses, my future at the company. The betrayal cut even deeper. My lawyer didn't even blink when I told him. "We'll hire investigators," he said, "and there's something else you should know. Phillips' wife has an ironclad prenup with a 7-figure penalty clause for infidelity." 3 weeks later, Director Phillips lost his job, his marriage, and $20 million to his now ex-wife. I allowed myself one smile when I heard the news. The investigators uncovered not just Phillips, but 3 other affairs spanning 8 years of our marriage. The evidence was delivered to my lawyer in manila envelopes I couldn't bring myself to open. I'd seen enough. When Catherine was served divorce papers, she called screaming. I let it go to voicemail. "You think you're so clever," her message hissed. "You have no idea what you've started." The custody battle was brutal. Despite court-ordered visitation, Catherine found endless excuses to cancel at the last minute. By the time I finally saw my children again, 6 weeks had passed, and they were different people. We sat in a booth at Hardee's, the fast food restaurant they'd once loved. Madison, my beautiful 16-year-old, wouldn't meet my eyes. Tyler, 14 and already taller than his sister, stared at his phone. "I've missed you both so much," I said, my voice thick. Madison finally looked up. "Dad, do we have to keep doing this?" "Doing what?" I asked, my stomach dropping. "These visits. Mom said we could just see you on birthdays and holidays if we want." Tyler finally spoke, his voice dripping with practiced disdain. "It was just sex, Dad. Why'd you have to make such a big deal about it?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "Just sex. Your mother broke our marriage vows." "Whatever," Madison interrupted. "You abandoned us. Mom's boyfriend Jake has been there more than you have." "Jake takes us to games," Tyler added. "He doesn't just work all the time like you did." Something inside me snapped. I slammed my water glass down, sending droplets across the table. Both children flinched. "I have never abandoned you," I said, my voice dangerously low. "I fought for you both. Your mother kept you from me. And if you'd rather have Jake than your father, then fine. You've made your choice." I stood, threw money on the table, and walked out. They called after me, but I didn't turn around. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I had coached their teams, checked their homework, kissed their scraped knees. I had been there for every important moment of their lives, and Catherine had poisoned them against me in just 6 weeks. When they called over the next few days, I didn't answer. At our final mediation session, Catherine smiled smugly across the table. "I cheated because I wanted to," she said simply. "And I'm not sorry." I wrote a check for the full amount of child support owed until both kids turned 18. In the memo line I wrote, "Payment in full for surrendering my children." As we left, Catherine whispered, "You'll regret this, Jackson. I have your children, and they'll always be your weakness." An hour after signing the final divorce papers, I resigned from my job and left the city. I told no one where I was going. My mother called a week later. "The kids came by looking for you," she said. "They seemed upset when they realized you'd moved away." "They made their choice," I replied, though my heart broke all over again. "Now they have to live with it." "What happened, Jackson?" she asked. "This isn't like you." I gazed out at the ocean from my new balcony. "I'm not the same person anymore, Mom." After I hung up, I wondered why my children suddenly wanted to find me after making it clear they didn't need a father. What had changed? What wasn't I seeing? Charlotte became my sanctuary, a city where nobody knew my name or my story. My company's regional office welcomed me with professional courtesy and a furnished corporate apartment that felt as empty as I did. Sterile walls, generic furniture, and not a single photo. Perfect. I changed my phone number the day I left my old life behind. When the finalized divorce papers arrived via certified mail, I took them to the small concrete patio of my apartment, lit them with a match, and watched my marriage officially turn to ash. The smoke curled into the night sky, carrying away 17 years of promises that meant nothing in the end. My parents visited a month after I settled in. Mom cried when she saw the barren apartment. "Where are your things, Jackson? Your books? Your music collection?" "In storage," I replied, though I'd already decided to never retrieve them. "Those belongings belong to a different man." "You've changed," Dad said quietly as they were leaving. "I can see it in your eyes." "I'm not the same person anymore," I told him. "That Jackson died the moment he opened that bedroom door." For the next 2 years, I became a ghost who happened to be excellent at banking. I arrived first, left last, and spoke only when necessary. Weekends were for working from home or punishing my body at the gym. Colleagues initially tried to include me in happy hours and weekend gatherings, but my cold refusals eventually dried up the invitations. "Hayes is brilliant, but Christ, what a miserable bastard," I overheard one day. I didn't disagree. At night, when the apartment grew too quiet, I'd sometimes find myself staring at my phone, wondering what Madison and Tyler were doing. Had Madison gotten her driver's license? Was Tyler still playing baseball? The questions haunted me, but I never called. They had made their choice, and I was determined to honor it, even as it hollowed me out. The gym became my therapy. I'd never been particularly athletic during my marriage. Dad bod was Catherine's affectionate term, but rage and heartbreak proved to be powerful motivators. Every rep, every mile on the treadmill was fueled by memories I couldn't outrun. By my 39th birthday, I barely recognized the man in the mirror. Leaner, stronger, with silver threading through my temples and permanent lines etched around my eyes. That same day, I was promoted to Regional Director of Commercial Banking. My boss cited my unwavering focus and commitment. Translation: I had no life outside work, which made me the perfect corporate soldier. I celebrated alone with a glass of whiskey, watching the Charlotte skyline from my window. Another year older. Another year distant from the life I once had. Everything changed 3 months later when Isabella Rodriguez stormed into my office without knocking. "We need to talk about your attitude, Mr. Hayes," she announced, arms crossed over her chest. I looked up from my computer, prepared to deliver the icy stare that sent most employees scurrying away. Instead, I found myself face to face with 5 feet 1 inch of unwavering determination. "Excuse me?" I managed. "Your attitude. It's affecting team morale. 3 of my analysts are afraid to bring you their reports because you make them feel incompetent." I should have been angry. I should have reminded her who outranked whom. Instead, something extraordinary happened. I laughed. A genuine laugh that felt rusty in my throat. Isabella's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed suspiciously. "I don't see what's funny about this situation." In that moment, I truly saw her for the first time. Glossy black hair pulled back in a neat bun, intelligent brown eyes that held none of the fear my presence usually inspired. Full lips currently pressed into a disapproving line. Something long dormant stirred within me. "No one has spoken to me like that in years," I admitted. "Especially not at work." "Well, someone should have," she replied, but the edge in her voice had softened. After that confrontation, I found myself noticing Isabella around the office. Her focused expression during meetings, her kind interactions with junior staff, the way she hummed softly when waiting for the elevator. For the first time in years, I was curious about another person. I challenged myself to small steps, saying good morning instead of nodding silently, making actual eye contact instead of staring at my phone in the elevator. Eventually, brief conversations evolved into occasional lunches in the company cafeteria. "You smiled at Johnson in the budget meeting," my assistant remarked one day. "I didn't know you could do that." Isabella and I gradually revealed pieces of ourselves to each other. Over coffee one afternoon, she told me about finding her fiancé in bed with another man 6 months before their wedding. "The worst part wasn't even the betrayal," she said quietly. "It was realizing our entire relationship had been a lie." That night, I invited her to dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown, our first meeting outside work. There, with a bottle of wine between us, I finally told my story. All of it. The anniversary surprise, the motel room, the children who chose their mother's version of events. I expected pity in her eyes. Instead, I found understanding. "The people who claim to love us can be our most dangerous enemies," she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Her fingers were warm against mine, the first gentle touch I'd received in years. For weeks afterward, we existed in a strange limbo, more than colleagues, not quite dating. I checked the company handbook about workplace relationships, relieved to discover no policies against dating colleagues from different departments. Still, other barriers remained. "I'm afraid," Isabella admitted one evening as we walked along the river. "After David, I swore I'd never trust another man enough to be vulnerable again." "I understand," I replied. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm even capable of trusting a woman after what Catherine did." We stopped walking, facing each other in the glow of a street lamp. The night air was cool against my skin, but something warm was blooming in my chest, tentative and fragile. "We're both damaged goods," Isabella said with a sad smile. I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe that's why we might be able to heal each other." When she leaned into my touch instead of withdrawing, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope that had sustained me through my divorce, but something gentler and more sustainable. The hope that perhaps the best parts of life weren't behind me after all. "I can't promise I won't be difficult," I warned her. "I've spent 2 years perfecting the art of pushing people away." Isabella laughed, a sound I'd grown to crave. "And I can't promise I won't call you out when you're being an ass." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. "But I'd like to try, if you would." That night, standing by the river with a woman brave enough to confront my demons, I made a decision. The past would always be there, the betrayal, the loss, the anger. But perhaps it was time to stop letting it dictate my future. Dating at 39 felt like learning to walk again after a devastating injury. Our first date at a small jazz club downtown had me adjusting my tie nervously in the bathroom mirror like a teenager. When Isabella arrived wearing a simple red dress that hugged her curves, my mouth went dry. I couldn't remember the last time a woman had affected me physically like that. We started slow: coffee shops, movie theaters, walks in the park. Each date, I revealed a little more of myself, and Isabella patiently chipped away at the walls I'd built. By our 4th date, when she invited me into her apartment, I found myself terrified for entirely new reasons. "We don't have to do anything," she whispered, sensing my hesitation. "It's not that," I admitted. "It's been a long time, and the last woman I was with." Isabella placed her finger against my lips. "I'm not her, and you're not my ex. We're just us, here now." That night changed everything. In her bed, with moonlight spilling across her skin, I felt something crack open inside me, a part I thought had died years ago. Isabella was passionate in all aspects of life. When frustrated, she'd erupt in rapid-fire Spanish that I couldn't understand but found incredibly attractive. "Eres el hombre más terco que he conocido jamás," she shouted one day, after I refused to take medicine for a fever. "I have no idea what you just said," I replied weakly from the couch. "But I think I'm in love with you." The words had slipped out before I could stop them. Isabella froze, then broke into a brilliant smile. "It's about time you admitted it, stubborn man." I began taking Spanish lessons in secret, wanting to understand her world more fully. 3 months later, Isabella invited me to Sunday dinner with her family, a chaotic gathering of parents, siblings, nieces, and nephews, in a house that seemed too small for so many people, yet somehow perfect. Her father eyed me suspiciously while her mother kept refilling my plate. Throughout dinner, family members whispered about me in Spanish, assuming I couldn't understand. "Es demasiado viejo para ella," I heard her uncle mutter. "Too old for her." "No sonríe mucho," added her cousin. "Doesn't smile much." After dinner, when Isabella's father asked in broken English if my intentions were honorable, I responded in careful Spanish. "Señor Rodríguez, amo a su hija, y quiero pasar mi vida con ella, si usted me da su bendición." The room fell silent. Isabella's mouth dropped open. "Since when do you speak Spanish?" she asked when we were alone. "Since the day you agreed to date me," I replied, pulling her close. "I wanted to understand your world." As our relationship deepened, we faced inevitable conversations about the future. At 39 and 33, we couldn't afford to waste time if we wanted certain things. The topic of children arose unexpectedly one Sunday morning, as we lay tangled in sheets. "I stopped taking birth control," Isabella announced without preamble. 2 months ago." My body tensed. "You didn't think to discuss that with me?" "I'm discussing it now," she replied, propping herself up on one elbow. "I want a baby, Jackson. I want your baby." Her directness was both terrifying and refreshing. "But if you don't want this..." Did I want to be a father again? The question haunted me for days. My first attempt had ended in heartbreak, with children who chose to remove me from their lives. The thought of experiencing that pain again was almost unbearable. But the thought of not having a family with Isabella was worse. 1 month later, at her family's regular Sunday dinner, I dropped to one knee in the middle of dessert, producing a ring I'd spent weeks selecting. Isabella Rodriguez, you've brought life back into a man who thought he was beyond saving. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? The family erupted in cheers when she said yes, her father clapping me on the back with unexpected strength while her mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Later that evening, I formally asked her parents for their blessing, in Spanish. Isabella rewarded my cultural respect with some very special Spanish lessons that night. You've taught me words I don't think I should use in front of your parents, I laughed as we lay exhausted in the early morning hours. Telling my parents about our engagement was less celebratory. They were happy for me, but concerned. What about Madison and Tyler? Mom asked gently. What about them? I replied, more sharply than intended. Will you invite them to the wedding? The question struck like a physical blow. They made it clear they didn't want me in their lives. Why would I invite them into mine? We married 6 months later in a small ceremony by the ocean. Isabella was radiant in a simple white dress that concealed the tiny secret we'd discovered just a month before. Our first child was already growing inside her. As we exchanged vows, I made silent promises beyond the ones I spoke aloud. To never take her for granted, to communicate honestly, to be the man she deserved. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, I kissed her with all the emotion I'd once thought permanently extinguished. Our honeymoon cruise wasn't something I would have chosen, but seeing Isabella's joy made it perfect. We spent days exploring Caribbean ports and nights planning our future. Through it all, we really talked about expectations, fears, and hopes. I'd learned the hard way that communication was the foundation of a lasting marriage. Sophia Hayes Rodriguez arrived 9 months later at 2:17 in the morning after 18 hours of labor that left me in awe of Isabella's strength. When the nurse placed our daughter in my arms, her thick black hair already evident, something shifted in my universe. The bitterness I'd carried for years seemed suddenly irrelevant in the face of this tiny, perfect being who needed me. She's beautiful, I whispered, handing her to Isabella. Just like her mother. Isabella smiled tiredly. She has your eyes. The first year was a blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and moments of wonder. I threw myself into fatherhood with the same intensity I'd once reserved for my career, determined to be present for every milestone. Isabella and I agreed early on that there would be no secrets between us. No mysterious late nights, no unexplained absences, no hidden passwords. Sophia grew into a curious, spirited child who brought joy to everyone she met. By the time she was 3, she was already switching effortlessly between English and Spanish, sometimes in the same sentence, creating her own unique Spanglish that amused her extended family. No, Daddy, she would say firmly, tiny hands on her hips. Así no, like this. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was still important, but it no longer defined me. My priorities had shifted irrevocably. Each night I found myself looking forward to bedtime stories with Sophia and quiet conversations with Isabella on the porch after our daughter fell asleep. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday 7 years after I'd left my old life behind, my phone rang while I was reviewing quarterly reports. I answered without checking the caller ID. Hello? The voice on the other end sent a jolt through me, achingly familiar yet belonging to another lifetime. Dad? It's Madison. My throat tightened. My only daughter is 4 years old. A sharp intake of breath. Dad, please, I need to talk to you. After 7 years of silence? The old bitterness rose like bile. What could you possibly have to say? I'm getting married, she said, her voice breaking. In 3 months, and I want you to walk me down the aisle. The pen I'd been holding snapped in my hand, leaving a blue streak across the report. Why would you want that? You made your choice very clear. Because I know the truth now, Madison whispered. About everything. I almost hung up. My finger hovered over the end call button as Madison's voice, a woman's voice now, not the teenager I remembered, continued. Dad, please don't hang up. 7 years of silence, and now she wanted me back in her life? The irony was almost too much to bear. What do you want from the man who raised you, loved you, and then was thrown away like garbage? I asked, my voice harder than I intended. A male voice came on the line. Mr. Hayes, my name is Andrew Pearson. I'm Madison's fiancé. I know this is unexpected, but please, just hear her out. Something in his tone, respectful but firm, made me pause. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk. Isabella, Sophia, and me at the beach last summer. My family. My real family. You have 5 minutes, I said. Madison's voice returned, thick with tears. Dad, I want you to walk me down the aisle. I'm sorry. I was stupid and young and manipulated, and I've regretted it every day since. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. Madison's first steps, teaching her to ride a bike. Her high school graduation just months before my world imploded. Why now, after 7 years? Because I know the truth now, she repeated. Mom told us if we rejected you at Hardee's that day, you'd come back home. She said you were just being stubborn and needed to be taught a lesson. Her voice broke. We called after you when you walked out, but you never turned around. My mind flashed back to that day, the sound of my children calling after me as I stormed out, too angry and hurt to look back. How different might things have been if I had turned around? Tyler joined the army to get away from Mom, Madison continued. He's deployed overseas now. My son, in a war zone? A cold fear gripped me, different from any I'd felt before. My boy, facing danger while I sat in my comfortable office. And that day at Hardee's, Madison's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't even know what sex was. Not really. I was just repeating what Mom told me to say. I didn't understand what it meant or how it would hurt you. I pressed my palms against my eyes, fighting back emotions I thought I'd buried years ago. Dad, are you still there? I need time, I managed. This is a lot. Of course, Andrew said, taking the phone again. We understand. Here's my number. Call when you're ready to talk more. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at the business card where I'd written Andrew's number. When Isabella came home with Sophia that evening, one look at my face told her something significant had happened. Jackson, what's wrong? She asked after putting Sophia to bed. I told her everything, watching her expressive face cycle through shock, anger, and finally compassion. You should meet them, she said simply. Just like that? I asked, surprised at her immediate acceptance. Isabella took my hands in hers. Life is too short to throw away chances at healing. Besides, she added with a small smile, I've always wanted to know your children. A week later, we scheduled a video call with Madison and Andrew. Seeing my daughter's face, so like her mother's but with my eyes, was jarring. She'd grown into a beautiful young woman, her fiancé a tall, serious-looking man, who kept a supportive hand on her shoulder throughout our conversation. Isabella joined us halfway through, bringing a warmth to the awkward call that only she could provide. She asked about wedding plans, making Madison laugh with stories about our own ceremony. I found your family on Facebook, Madison admitted shyly. Isabella's family page. That's how I knew you'd remarried and had Sophia. When Sophia heard her name, she came running, pressing her face close to the camera. Are you my sister? She asked Madison directly, causing everyone to laugh. Yes, I am, Madison replied, wiping away a tear. And I've been waiting a long time to meet you. Before ending the call, Madison asked the question I could see had been troubling her. Dad, did you ever forget about us? The lump in my throat made it hard to speak. Madison, I never forgot you. How could I? You're my daughter. A month later, Madison and Andrew flew to Charlotte. I paced the airport terminal, my heart hammering against my ribs. Isabella squeezed my hand, while Sophia bounced excitedly beside us. When Madison emerged from the gate, I barely recognized her. This poised young woman was so different from the angry teenager in my memories. She hesitated, then rushed forward, throwing her arms around me. The years of anger and pain melted away as I held my firstborn child. I'm so sorry, Dad, she whispered against my shoulder. I am too, I replied, meaning it more than she could know. Sophia, never one for patience, wiggled between us. My turn to hug my sister. That weekend, we took them to Canadian Hole Beach, a family tradition since Sophia was a toddler. Watching Madison and Andrew build sandcastles with Sophia, I felt a strange sense of worlds colliding, my past and present merging into something unexpected but beautiful. Isabella and Madison formed an immediate bond that surprised me. I found them in the kitchen late one night, sharing stories and laughing like old friends. She's wonderful, Jackson, Isabella told me later. I see you in her. That same determination, that same heart. The final evening before they left, Sophia presented Madison with a crayon drawing, 5 stick figures standing under a blue sun. It's all of us, she explained proudly. And see, that's Tyler too, even though he's not here yet. During their visit, Andrew mentioned they were having car trouble. Their old Honda's engine was failing, a significant expense for 2 graduate students. After they left, Isabella and I made a decision. We purchased a pre-owned Volvo S60, safe, reliable, perfect for a young couple starting out, and had it delivered to their apartment with a simple note. Something to bring you back to visit more often. Love, Dad and Isabella. Madison called, sobbing. Dad, you bought us a car? Just looking out for my daughter, I replied, my own voice unsteady. That's what fathers do. What about the money? Andrew asked, clearly overwhelmed. We can't possibly. Isabella took the phone. Don't worry about any of that. This is what family does for each other. 3 months later, just before Christmas, we received news that Tyler would be home on leave. The day we went to pick him up, I brought everyone. Isabella, Sophia, Madison, and Andrew, and even Isabella's cousin Rosa, who was visiting for the holidays. When Tyler stepped into the terminal in his uniform, I barely recognized the boy who had become a man. He stopped when he saw our group, his eyes widening as they landed on me. For one terrible moment, I thought he might turn away. Instead, he dropped his duffel bag and crossed the distance between us in 4 long strides, wrapping me in a fierce embrace. I'm sorry, Dad, he whispered, his voice deep and unfamiliar in my ear. I'm sorry too, son, I replied, holding him tightly. So very sorry. When we finally separated, Tyler turned to Isabella with a warm smile. You must be the stepmother I've heard so much about. To my astonishment, he hugged her and said, Thank you for taking care of my dad, Mom. Sophia, never shy, launched herself at his legs. I'm your sister. I've been waiting forever to meet you. As we gathered our things to leave, I noticed Tyler's gaze lingering on Rosa, who was helping with his bags. Rosa, beautiful and vivacious like her cousin, returned his smile with a slight blush. In that moment, watching my reunited family, both old and new, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't known I was missing. The wounds that had defined me for so long hadn't disappeared, but they had healed into scars I could finally bear with dignity. The night before Madison's wedding, she and I sat alone on the porch of our rental cabin. The rest of the family had gone to bed, leaving us in rare privacy. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice small. About after you left. I braced myself, unsure if I was ready to hear what came next. Mom couldn't accept responsibility for what she did. She blamed us for driving you away. Madison's hands trembled as she continued. When I was 17, she brought home a man, one of her boyfriends. She told me I should entertain him while she ran errands. My blood turned to ice. Madison! I locked myself in my room. He tried to break the door down. Tears streamed down her face. That's when Tyler came home early from baseball practice. He threatened the guy with a bat until he left. I pulled her into my arms as she sobbed against my chest. My daughter, my child, had been put in danger by the woman who should have protected her. In that moment, I made a silent vow. My children will never face that woman again without me standing between them. 3 months after the wedding, we moved into a 2-story colonial in Belmont, a house large enough for our growing family. The property included a garage apartment perfect for Tyler during his visits, and the backyard backed up to a wooded area where Sophia could explore. This is our forever home, I told Isabella as we stood in the empty living room. Sophia raced up and down the stairs, her laughter echoing through the house. My room is so big, she squealed. Isabella leaned into me as we watched our daughter. You planned for a lot of bedrooms, she observed with a knowing smile. Just being prepared, I replied, kissing her forehead. I'd made sure one bedroom was positioned perfectly for a nursery, though we hadn't discussed expanding our family. Later that evening, as we soaked in the oversized garden tub, Isabella's one non-negotiable feature when house hunting, she looked at me with mischief in her eyes. Mr. Hayes, I believe you're trying to seduce me with this bathroom. I pulled her closer. Is it working? She laughed, the sound bouncing off the tile. It might be. Tyler's visits became more frequent after meeting Rosa. I accidentally walked in on them kissing in the kitchen late one night, clearing my throat dramatically as Tyler jumped away from her. Just remember, I told him later, trying to keep a straight face. If you hurt her, you'll have to deal with Isabella's entire family. All 37 of them. Tyler grinned, looking so much like the boy I remembered. I'm learning Spanish, Dad, for Rosa, and for Isabella and Sophia, too. When he announced his plans to attend Duke after his discharge, I knew Rosa was a significant factor in his decision. The way Isabella's family embraced him, bringing him into their traditions, teaching him their recipes, including him in their jokes, healed parts of him I hadn't realized were broken. Madison's wedding day arrived with perfect weather and nervous anticipation. As I adjusted my tie in the hotel room, Isabella smoothed my lapels. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. "For 7 years I thought this moment would never happen," I admitted. "I'm terrified I'll mess it up somehow." "You won't," she assured me, her faith unwavering. When the moment came to walk Madison down the aisle, my heart pounded so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. She looked radiant, a grown woman now, not the little girl who once sat on my shoulders at the zoo. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" I whispered as we began our walk. "Yes, Dad," she replied, squeezing my arm. "I am." Isabella and Sophia watched from the front row, both wiping away tears as I placed Madison's hand in Andrew's and took my seat beside my wife. The ceremony was perfect until the reception, when Catherine appeared, uninvited and clearly unstable. She approached our table, her eyes unfocused. "Jackson," she slurred, "I've been waiting for you to come to your senses. We can be a family again." Before I could respond, Isabella stood. "Take your hands off my husband," she said, her voice deadly calm. Tyler appeared at Catherine's side. "Why do you think I joined the army, Mom? To get away from you." Security escorted her out. We learned later she suffered a breakdown and was hospitalized. Life continued its beautiful momentum. Isabella announced her pregnancy just weeks after Madison shared her own news. Tyler completed his service and started at Duke with Rosa by his side. When they announced their engagement 6 months later, Sophia, now 5 and relishing her role as both big and little sister, insisted on being Flower Girl again. Our house became the gathering place for both sides of our blended family. On Sunday evenings, our dining table groaned under the weight of Isabella's mother's recipes, and my father's barbecue, 3 generations talking over each other in a mixture of English and Spanish. At 44, I often reflect on my journey, how the betrayal that once defined me has faded into a distant chapter in a much longer story. The 17 years with Catherine pale in comparison to the richness of 7 years with Isabella. I've learned that nothing is perfect, but with cooperation, compromise, and communication, it can come remarkably close. Looking around our living room now, Madison and Andrew cradling their newborn son, Tyler and Rosa hand in hand discussing wedding plans, Sophia playing on the floor, I feel a contentment I once thought impossible. Isabella leans her head against my shoulder, her pregnancy barely showing. "Any regrets?" she whispers. I smile, pulling her closer. "Regrets about what?" "Every path that led to this moment was worth it." She laughs softly. "Even learning all those Spanish curse words?" "Especially those," I reply, kissing her temple. "Life doesn't always give us what we want, but what we need. I needed Isabella. I needed Sophia. I needed Madison and Tyler back. And now, for the first time in many years, I have it all. Not one, but 2 perfect families merged into one." As if reading my thoughts, Isabella looks up at me with those deep brown eyes that saved me, and we both say at the same time, "La familia es todo." Family is everything.